Thanks for tuning in to OPM Live, where the ordinary is the extraordinary. And you know, Ordinary People Live is the extension of Ordinary People magazine. Do forgive me. I've had such a busy morning. Seems like I am not remembering very well. But thank you so much for tuning in to OPM Live, which is an extension for Ordinary People magazine. And today we have an awesome guest. We will bring him in later. But first, let's thank our sponsors, Vimashi Enterprise, Southern Eagle Music Group, It's a Raised Vision, and Gemstones and Trinkets. And as I've been saying, we have to keep ourselves safe and everyone else. We're wearing our masks. We're still wearing our masks, and we are still 6 feet apart. And make sure that you are getting all the updates from the CDC. I want to just thank you and to remind you to follow us on our Facebook page, which is OPM Live with Verna V. Nickelberry, and our YouTube page. Please do subscribe, and it is the same, OPM Live with Verna V. Nickelberry. And we're going to bring in our guest, who is Mr. Tiran Jackson. He's an awesome motivational speaker, and we are going to bring him in now. Hi, Tiran. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Verna. I am doing well. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I am doing fantastic. It's a busy day, but I'm moving forward. So, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself with our audience and what is it that you do as a motivational speaker and everything that you have going on. And I know you're a very busy person. So, if you don't mind sharing everything.
No problem. I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. Well, first off, as Verna said, I am Tiran Jackson. I hail from Atlanta, Georgia. And basically, what I do is I'm a motivational speaker and I speak to people about some of the challenges that they may face in life and trying to overcome those adversities that they happen to encounter. I'll get into my story shortly, but I've had to overcome the levels of adversity over the course of my recent history. And in the midst of doing so, I've learned certain principles and certain steps that at the time I may not have realized, but actually became a blueprint that I use to actually try to help other people. I use my story to try to inspire others to get the most out of themselves, as far as those who find themselves. And now we all have this situation, and as Verna alluded to earlier, we're still trying to be safe and deal with COVID. And COVID has had a great strain on the way we operate, the way we do things, the way we see and interact with our families. And it also has a impact on the way that we actually operate mentally and emotionally. And so we can find ourselves being down or depressed or stuck in some ways. And I try to help people, not just related to that, but in multiple ways, overcome those issues and challenges that they face. So as I stated, I try to use my story as an example for people to think and realize that they can overcome and be triumphant in any battles and any issues that they may be facing. So that's the short version, Verna. Right.
So, you mentioned your story. Is that how you became a motivational speaker?
Yes, it was. That was so. As I start to get into my story, you'll see that there were ways that I didn't at the time see and understand what my purpose was. But through going through my situation, my defining moment, it revealed a number of things for me, which led to me finding my purpose and my passion. And then from there, it became something that it was instructed to me that this is what God wanted me to do, to be able to share and use that to help other people. So as far as it wasn't the track that I had expected to go down. If I backtrack, well, I go into my story and it'll give some background as to where I was and just everything that happened leading to what I'm doing now. And so with that, I'll begin speaking about it. Um, First off, I went to college at Tennessee State University and I went to school to be an engineer. While I was there, I met this young lady. Her name was Maleka Grimes at the time. And we started dating towards the end of our college career. And 2 years after that, we got married. And this was back, well, this was back in 2003 when we got married. After that, we moved and lived in Indiana, where I was actually an engineer. And my career had been in engineering. I was an engineer for about 17 or 18 years before things changed with my life ultimately. Um, we moved to Atlanta back 11 years ago, 2009, and things were great. Things were fine. We had made a home here, established a network of people. We're raising our son. Everything was great. I fast forward up to 2018. In 2018, that summer, we were getting ready to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary. And in doing so, we had been planning for some time what we were going to do. That's a pretty big, milestone for someone. Once you got that person, we had a great marriage, and we started planning on what we were going to do. And we actually decided that we were going to go on a trip, not bring our kid, not do things with family. We're just going to spend the time to connect and just enjoy each other in our company. So we decided, out of all the places that we were going to go, that we were going to go to the Bahamas to celebrate that accomplishment, to be together 15 years, happily married, and just enjoy ourselves. So in the summer of 2018, it was a Thursday. We were actually flying and starting on our way to the Bahamas. My wife at the time, she was excited because one of the things that we were going to this island called Exuma. And the big attraction to Exuma was that they had these wild pigs that you could swim with. And so she was excited about that. She was really looking forward to doing it. And I'm thinking to myself, going to have a great time. This is going to be awesome. We both have been busy with work. She was an HR director. She was over diversity and inclusion for several Fortune 500 companies. So she was actually moving up with her career. As I stated, I was an engineer, and we looked at this as a great time to unwind. We take our trip to the Bahamas. The first 2 days, we have a great time. Get to spend some time on the beach, get to spend some time at the pool. We even got the chance to have a couple of fruity drinks and even relax. That was the whole thing, to relax, just bond, talk about where we were in life, talked about this 15-year adventure that we've had together and all the years that we had in front of us, and looking ahead to the future. On the third day of the trip, we had planned a boating excursion. And during this excursion was going to be the opportunity where we were actually going to leave the resort and get to tour the island, but get to swim with those pigs that Maleka really wanted to do. So we happened to book a trip that was going to be half a day. And we got up early that morning so we could go to breakfast and be waiting at the bus stop so we could actually go to the marina where we were going to actually go on the trip at 9 o'clock in the morning. Get on the boat, 9 o'clock, everything is great, no issues, no problems. We take off from the dock. There happened to be two boats. There was another boat that was going for a whole day tour. So they were leaving at the same time we were. We leave at 9 o'clock. Things seemed great. I was sitting there on the boat. I had Maleka on the other side of me, had my arm up, and I was veering off to the right side, thinking that, this is going to be a great adventure. The weather's great. Sun's out. We're seeing all the scenery as we start to head towards our destination. However, 5 minutes into the boat ride, everything changed. At that moment, the boat exploded. And the next thing that I remembered, I was laying face down on the surface of a burning boat. I'd been knocked unconscious. I looked down. I saw my left foot dangling. At the time, I was in shock. The reason why I was brought out of consciousness was because my right leg was literally burning, and it was on fire from what happened on the boat. As I start to come to, I look up and I see that second boat, and there's passengers on that boat yelling to me, "Get off the boat, get off the boat." Now, not knowing what was going on, as I stated, I looked down, I saw my foot dangling, and I tried to push myself up, and I didn't know it at the time, but my collarbone was broken in 4 places, so I couldn't even do that. The only thing that I could do was use my right arm and reach and try to pull myself through the ridges at the top of on the surface of the boat towards the edge of the boat, just to try to get away from those burning flames. At this point in time, I didn't know where Maleka was. I didn't know what was going on. I ended up passing out as I was getting closer to the edge of the boat. Thankfully, several of the passengers from the other boat were able to swim across. They hadn't ventured too far away from our boat, and they were able to come and pull me off of the boat.
Now, were you the only person on the boat at that time?
I was the only person on the boat at that time. This boat happened to have, it was a total of 10 passengers and the captain and his first mate. And I didn't know it at the time. Everyone else had either been thrown off the boat or was able to get off the boat. There was one other passenger who happened to be on the boat, and he actually tried to revive me because he saw me laying there, and he tried to pick me up, but he couldn't pick me up. So he got off the boat to save himself. So here I am, the only person on the boat, happened to be burning, literally burning. And by the grace of God, there was that second boat that was there, and those passengers, a lot of things had to happen. The water was shallow, so it wasn't that deep. The other boat wasn't that far away, and it was close enough to where some of them could swim and get over to get to me and be able to carry me off of the boat and onto their boat to at least save my life at that point. So once I finally, and in the midst of this, I was going in and out of consciousness. The next thing that I remembered was being on the back of a pickup truck, because this was the means that they were actually going to take me to safety. So I was placed on basically a piece of plywood on an old pickup truck being carried to a clinic. And there was one other person with me. They didn't have an ambulance. Well, they did have one, and that came and that picked up one other passenger and Maleka. And I was on the back of that truck asking, where's Maleka? How is Maleka? Because I didn't see her. I didn't know what happened to her. And I didn't get to see her or know what happened until I actually was being carried into the clinic. As I was being rolled into the clinic on a gurney, I could hear Maleka, her moans, her yells, her shrieks of pain. And the only thing I was thinking was, I pray that my wife is okay. And as I get put into the bay where they were keeping me, and they had me, at this point, there was one doctor who was addressing 3 patients. It was Maleka, it was one other passenger, and there was myself that were horribly injured. The doctors came to me, and as I asked how was Maleka, they wouldn't tell me anything. They were giving me tramadol and pain medication just to sort of keep me calm. And they had wrapped my left foot up in a bandage to sort of keep it from falling off the rest of my leg. After a short amount of time, I really didn't have much treatment while I was there because they were trying to apparently address Maleka and the other patient. They came to me and they said that we're going to have to send you to the good hospital. So you're going to get put on an air ambulance, and we're going to fly you from the island of Exuma to Nassau, which was, from my understanding, about a 30-minute flight. And at this point, I can't move. I can't do anything. I'm just sitting there praying to God and thinking to myself, I don't know what happened. I hope that we're all right. I hope that my wife is okay. They tell me they're flying me and this other passenger that was horribly injured on this plane to the good hospital. And my only question was, what about Maleka? And all they would tell me is she'll be coming later. So at that point in time, I was thinking, okay, my wife is going to be okay. If I'm still here and they're telling me that me and this other person are the first ones they're sending to this good hospital, then it makes me think that she must be injured at a lesser state. But I didn't get a chance to see her, didn't get a chance to speak, didn't know what was going on at the time. So, during this time, everything is a blur. Um, I arrive at this other hospital, and the first thing that they do is they put me through a CAT scan to see everything that was wrong with me, and decide that they were going to start putting me under so they could start emergency surgery. What they were looking to do during that surgery was basically try to reattach my left foot to my leg to see if I would be able to save my foot. The next thing that I remember after all of that, it was later in the afternoon that evening, and I'm finally starting to come to my senses after being under anesthesiology, and everything is starting to, I'm still in pain, can't move, can't do anything. Um, the doctors come to me, and the first thing that I ask them is, what about Maleka? Did she make it? Is she here too? Because I was under the belief that either they were using the same plane that they flew me there, that they were going to come back and get her and bring her to that hospital, or that there was a second plane that was going to bring her there. So in the midst of that, the doctors that came into my room to talk to me, they actually left the room. And at that time, I didn't really know what was going on. I'm thinking this is a, simple question. You can tell me if she's here yet, and I would, wanted to see her.
Right.
But the doctors, they came back in and they said, Mr. Jackson, we hate to inform you that Maleka didn't make it. And when they said that she didn't make it, my heart dropped, because I didn't want to believe that they meant that the airplane hadn't arrived yet. But in reality, they were telling me that my wife had passed away.
Wow.
So it was, not only was I physically in a great deal of pain, but emotionally, just getting that news was the hardest thing that I had to deal with at that point in time. So
did it throw you into shock?
Oh yeah, shock is an understatement. The whole day was, I can't put into words the level of shock and surprise that I was experiencing. I mean, like I said, that morning we thought we were going off on a great adventure that's going to be part of this amazing vacation that we were having, and then to be a passenger on this boat that explodes, to be physically to a point where I couldn't do anything myself, and know that she's injured, to finding out that she had died. There were so many emotions and so many thoughts that were going through my head. And even though I heard the doctors tell me that she died, it still didn't register.
Mm-hmm.
It still didn't hit me right then. So that was the worst possible feeling that I thought I could have at that point. Now, just to add on top of that, I don't know how I slept that night, but I remember waking up the next day and having to call our 12-year-old son at the time, who was staying with his aunt and uncle in Nashville, actually, that I dropped off the day before we took our flight to the Bahamas, and telling him, son, mommy isn't coming back home.
Wow.
And that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And
I can only imagine.
yeah, he's thinking his parents are going on a vacation.
Right.
We do those things, come back, that everything is going to be great, that he's going to get to see, his parents like he normally does, gets to spend some time with his cousins and his relatives. And to get that news was difficult, was extremely difficult to have to share to him. And he didn't know how to react and respond. And during that conversation, and I had my father-in-law, he's a pastor out of Chattanooga, actually. he was working with me to explain to my son that God has a plan for all of us, and that his mom, that my wife, was gonna live eternally, that she has an afterlife, and God has bigger plans for her at the time, and that was just the time that he wanted to call her home.
Right.
And even though, and here I am, at that point in time, I was struggling because spiritually, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, God, why did this have to happen to us? And
Mhm.
what was the reason for, Malika was a great person, a beautiful person. She did so much to help other people, and now she's gone.
Mhm.
And not only that, here I am lying in the hospital bed, and I don't know what's next for me.
Mhm.
And it gets, I mean, as things kept moving on that day, um, things did get worse. I was laying in the hospital bed, and as I mentioned before, the surgery that they did, they tried to reattach my foot to my ankle, essentially. Well, in the midst of everything that happened, with me being carried from that boat and in the water, and it just being exposed for a lot, it got infected. My leg got infected, and um, it was causing the infection to spread throughout my body. So as I was laying in the hospital bed that night, that second night, I was laying there, and I could see the EKG monitor that was above my head,
Uh-huh.
and I could see all my vitals starting to go from green to yellow to red in about a 4 to 5 hour span. My blood pressure was through the roof. I had a fever. My heart rate, just resting there, just kept getting higher and higher and higher, and my oxygen levels were starting to drop. And it got to a point, and the doctors were coming in and seeing this, and they were trying to do things, but they got to a point where the doctors stopped coming, and they just started getting priests to come in and pray over me.
Yeah.
And it was a, I mean, at that point, I'm praying to God, and I'm mad at God at the same time, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm about to die here as well. And so I was really at the lowest possible point imaginable, at least for, I mean, I couldn't have imagined this. I was in the truest state of despair. I couldn't do anything for myself. My wife had been taken away from me. My son, I had to break his heart and tell him that your mom is not coming back. And then on top of that, I'm trying to figure out if I'm even going to be here still, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done to save me. So so it was a very, very difficult, troubling situation to be in at that moment. Um, and so
Thing is, you prayed for yourself. You found strength even through
yeah,
all of those emotions. You found strength to pray for yourself. You didn't give up on you.
I didn't. I didn't. And it's interesting because I didn't. I knew that there was a reason that God was keeping me here.
Mhm.
First and foremost, um, I didn't want, and I didn't. One of the thoughts that went through my mind was, maybe He's keeping me here to raise our son.
Mhm.
That's my purpose. And things became clearer later on in my story, but it became apparent that I still needed to trust God, even though so much had happened. And even though I was, in shock and in pain, literally and figuratively, I still prayed and asked Him to keep me alive and keep me here and to pull me through this. As far as what happened after that, it took, and this is God working again. There were so many things that had to happen just right. But ultimately, my sister and brother-in-law, they were able to fly over from Nashville to the Bahamas the next day, and they were working to try to work with the U.S. Embassy and hospitals here in the U.S. trauma units that would be willing to accept me. And by that third day, the accident happened on a Saturday. All of these things happened on Sunday, and by Monday afternoon, I was being flown to a top-notch trauma unit in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And as soon as I got there, they said I had to go to emergency surgery. And at that point, they had to take my lower leg to ensure that the infection didn't continue getting worse to kill me. And and it was when I woke up to see that my leg was missing, it was like, wow. I mean, this is but they told my family that they had to do whatever they could to ensure that I was still alive and for them to trust the doctors for what they had to do. But as I stated, that if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here. The doctor said that if I would have been in the Bahamas one more day, that I would probably have died. And if it was two, I definitely would have been dead. So,
It's it's when we're at what it seems like, and I'm trying to keep myself calm. I am that person. I'm so visual. When you speaking, I see it all.
yeah,
When it seems like when we're at despair, it's like there's no more hope. No matter what it be, it may not be like yours, but when we're at that point, when it's like our back is against the wall and we're just ready to give up, we don't know what else to do.
yeah,
Just what else do I do? I've done all that I can do. It's at that moment that we literally stand on the word of God.
amen to that.
I mean, if you have a personal relationship with God, I'm trying to keep myself calm. You know for a fact that you can call on him
Amen.
and he is coming quickly.
Yep.
We don't really, I mean, you hear the elderly say it, you know, we hear all that when we're growing up, call on God, we hear it. But when you have nowhere else to go, no one else to call on, when you call on God and just allow him, it
Hmm.
he moves quick because you gave a timeline of
Yeah.
everything that happened. One more day, if you had to stay there, one more day, and then help came, the sister,
Yeah.
and then everybody started. Oh, thank you, God. I'm trying to keep myself calm. When you listen, I love me some Jesus. I love God
Hmm.
because I know from personal experience when your back is up against the wall and you're trying to do everything that you can do as a person, as a human being, we got somebody who's an advocate for us because he already told us he's going to lead someone here for us,
Hmm.
Holy Spirit. And when you have that personal relationship with God and you cry out to him, Lord, I
Yeah.
need you.
Yeah.
And you had that at that moment. You knew from your innermost experience, your innermost spirit, I got to call on God. I got to.
I had no choice. And as I state, I'm in a level of helplessness that is unimaginable. I can't move. I can't do anything for myself. I can't. I'm dependent on God to create a way
Yes.
for all of these things to happen.
Hmm.
And I mean, if there's and it takes it's so much more detail there, but it took things that only God could do for
Only.
me to even be able to survive and be here today or even get through those moments. If I go back into my story, um, after I had to go through that emergency surgery, 2 days later, I had to go through for now. I wasn't. My vitals were still in a questionable state after that emergency surgery. 2 days after that, I had to go through four surgeries in that one day. Um, I was broken, and I mean, literally, I was broken, and I not only lost my left leg, but my right foot was broken. I had second degree burns all up and down my right leg. I had a fractured pelvis, a fractured vertebrae, broken collarbone, um, and I had some damage to my ear and head. And when you think about all of those things, and it's just amazing that it's amazing that I didn't have even more damage because I didn't mention this earlier, but when I came to on the boat, there was a metal pipe that was holding up part of the railing, and it was right here, meaning that if it would have been 2 inches over, I would have been thrown directly into it. So
Wow.
for me to end up without having my head hit it directly with the force of the explosion, um, there was, the doctors and the neurologists, they were saying that, I could have had permanent brain damage, or that could have just, finished things right there. So even in the midst of something bad happening, there were little things that allowed me to survive still. Um, but as I was saying, after I started to recover from that day where I had all of those surgeries, it started to dawn on me. And I was talking to God throughout all this time and praying to him. And it became clear, I could have died during the explosion. I could have died during that time where I was in the Bahamas in the hospital bed. I could have died after they did the emergency surgery when I finally got to Florida. And he still wanted me to be here. He wanted to keep me here. And at that point, I knew that the life that I had before was going to be different, that there was a greater purpose, a greater destiny, a greater journey that he wanted me to go down towards, to to do other things in this world. And I'll say this, my wife Maleka, she was a very she was very philanthropic. She gave a lot. She sacrificed to help so many others get places and do things. And I was doing things as well, but I think that she, in some ways, fulfilled her purpose that God had for her, which was part of why he was comfortable with taking her home, because there was greater work that he wanted her to do. But for me, I had more work that I needed to do here, which is why I believe he kept me here. And so that leads to where I am today and what I'm doing now in the midst of getting through that period of time. And once I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, just trying to just to make sure that they didn't have to perform any other surgeries on me, and I was in a broken state physically and emotionally for about 6 weeks following. I was being pushed around in a wheelchair. I couldn't do anything. As I said, the only extremity that I had was my right arm. Everything else was either in a cast, or I couldn't put any weight on it. Like my left leg, I didn't have it anymore. So I was going through a significant period of depression to some extent, because when you're not capable of doing what you're used to doing, that
Yes.
was a major thing. Um, Emotionally, I still hadn't accepted the fact that Maleka was gone, even though I knew she wasn't. It still was not fully resonating, and I was afraid of what life was going to be like after you have somebody who you know your mate, your spouse, the person who you are dependent on as well, in order to have this life together, is just taken away. And then on top of that, my son, and just having to at the time manage how his emotions were, and my my physical space being near him or with him. And the reason why I say that, for the after I was after I left the hospital in Florida, I actually went to live with my sister and brother-in-law in Nashville for about a month and a half, 6 weeks or so. And my son, he was there staying with another aunt and uncle and cousins. And there was something about, him seeing me in a broken state that in his mind he was thinking, okay, I'm gonna lose my dad too. And so we had to sort of manage, how much, but at the same time, I did need to him to see me and talk and listen to me tell him, son, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this together and get him. And at that point in time, he was, about to enter being a teenager, and they get kind of funny as far as
Yeah.
sharing emotions and things of that nature. So to get him to start pulling out what he was already feeling, on top of the fact that he lost his mom, was rough. But once we got to a point where I was physically capable of coming back to what's our home here in Atlanta, I knew that we had to start this process of getting, not only spiritual support and advisement, but grief counseling in order to properly process what had happened. And because, as strong as we are and want to be, it takes more than just ourselves to get through some trying situations. And this was a very trying and tragic situation. So I wanted to make sure that, one, not only was I healing physically, but emotionally and mentally, that myself and our son Cameron was getting back to a point where we could at least move forward, start to move forward. So that was one of the biggest things, and it took some time. It definitely took some time for us to be in the house and her not be here anymore, to be able to just get to living life again with a sense of joy and happiness,
Mm-hmm.
because the grief can bring the level of sadness to a level that is just difficult to comprehend. But over time, and with support and finding the right um, avenues to help build ourselves back together, we got into a new normal, and we were able to start to be able to move forward with life again. And so since that time, um, a lot of things have happened. We've learned a lot of lessons. I had to learn how to be mom and dad. I had to learn how to, as minor as this sound, figure out how to put lunch money in his school account so he could be able to eat and everything. I didn't do that before. And so, I mean, there's a number of things that have come, but we've we've accepted it. We've adapted to different things, and we've moved forward. And now we're not just living, but we're thriving, which
That's
I think is great.
great.
And with that being said, I look to help people who have been going through difficult and challenging situations, and help come up with a plan on how to help them not just get through it, but to get through it and thrive, because
There's something.
ultimately, well,
You said you was broken. You said I was broken, and you was showing the different places. But when you think about it, isn't it great that God knows how to put us back together?
yes, it is.
The
It
doctor,
is.
even
Ooh,
using the doctors,
yeah,
because He is the one who created us. He knows
yeah,
every inch of our body. What they say,
yeah,
He knows the number of hairs that we have on our head.
yeah,
He put us together. When you said that, I just thought about, isn't it great that He knows how to put us back together, even through the doctors. And we
yeah,
know the doctors go to school and they learn everything they need to learn and everything, but they can't do it without God. I mean, they
yeah,
can't do it without God. And the way you prayed, the way you knew how to pray, the way you just didn't give up is amazing. Whereas depression can take, may not be at that level, but depression can take some people completely away from here,
yeah,
completely down, you know. I can't speak for anyone else, but I can speak only for myself. When I feel the spirit of depression trying to come upon me, and you can actually feel it,
Yeah,
immediately I began to pray for myself because it could take you all the way down. I've been there and knowing how to pray. And I'm so thankful that you,
yeah.
Tyran, knew how to pray and you prayed all the way through.
I
That's
did.
a
I did.
blessing in itself.
And in some senses, all the time that I had to myself as I was going through these things and all these things to process forced me to have to get closer to God and improve that relationship because that was the only one that was there for me to talk to. And he was the only one that was going to get me through it. And
Absolutely.
so instead of spending too much time feeling sorry for myself and feeling down for what happened, he gave me the strength and he I mean brought me through the other side to be able to see that there is a greater vision and a greater purpose and a greater future for myself and for my son and for all of us there to get through and to use this as a tool to touch others
Yes.
and a means of being able to show the power that he has because I'm an example. I'm an example of it. If for most people, if I'm wearing some pants or some jeans, they'll never know that anything is wrong with me. Physically, he's brought me back to where I'm you wouldn't know that anything happened to me. And I think, that's amazing. Emotionally, I've learned so much about myself in the midst of going through this and so much about how I can help others. And so I think these are things that in a way he wanted me to do. This was his purpose for me. And so, I hate that what happened, but I've also learned to understand and appreciate that this is God's plan. Um, and one thing that I like to say is in one of my favorite Bible scriptures, it's Jeremiah 29:11, which many of us know. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And as I was in this state of mind, thinking about what happened to me, I had to keep in mind that God had a bigger plan for me and for a reason for me to have hope and look forward to that future. So um, it just that's been my outlook and what He put on my spirit and my heart as I was going through this. And like I said, I look to help people thrive and get out of this situation of being stuck or being depressed or just not understanding how they're going to get through difficult times and situations. So that's where I'm at now. Looking and trying to make sure that as a motivational speaker, that my words are used to help inspire and uplift others and help them maybe look in the mirror and say, do I need some help? And if so, what can be done in order to help me reach where I want to go, despite whatever wrong has happened?
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just love your spirit. It's amazing. Uh, the story is an amazing story of resilience on your part and how your mind shift so quickly.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
didn't stay there. You didn't stay there at
And,
all.
and that's the key. That's the key. I think that keeping, I use this analogy at times um, that if I visualize it as if we're on a treadmill. And if we just stand in that same spot and that treadmill is moving, we're actually moving back. We're getting worse. That's how depression can be. If we just sit there in that space and don't do what we need to move forward, we're actually being pulled further away from where we need to be. So it was important, and I've always been an optimistic, positive person, and try to have that positive spirit. And even at these lowest lowest points imaginable for me, God put it on my heart to keep trying, keep pushing, keep keep following His word, and understanding what needed to motivate me. And at the time, I remember, there was a conversation that Maleka and I had. This was about a year or so before the accident happened, where it was just her and I, and we were in our basement, and we were watching a movie, and we were having one of these what if conversations. And in the midst of it, we had this conversation of where we were talking about, well, what if something suddenly happens to me and I pass away? And she thought about it for a bit, and she told me several things, but the most important thing that stood out was that she said that if she passed away, that the one thing that she would want was for me to do everything within my power to raise our son and ensure that he grows up to be the young man and the king that he should be. And that really resonated with me, that she said that this would be the only part of me on this earth still here that were to happen. And as I was laying in the hospital bed and trying to get myself to move forward to do physical therapy when I couldn't move and didn't want to, and knew that I needed to get myself into um, the grief therapy and counseling, and knowing that I needed to get myself, in tune with God and His plan, that all of these things were going to serve as supporting that motivation to keep moving forward and not being stuck and not being in that place where I could be pulled back down. And, the devil works in ways that sometimes we don't realize, but sometimes we have to make sure that we lean on God even more so. And in that moment, in those times where I didn't want to do things, that was what drove me into making sure that I did what I needed to in order to fulfill her expectation from me, and which was, be a great parent to our son and follow God's word. So I'm grateful to have those things, because that was a testament to the strength and resilience that I needed to have in order to be able to get through that situation.
Mhm. When you were speaking and you mentioned being in the hospital bed, and when you began to pray that you wanted to live, the first thing popped in my mind. I'm not sure if it's one of my favorite movies. It's called "It's a Wonderful Life,"
Mhm.
and that one scene, and it always brings me to tears. It's that one scene when Jimmy Stewart, is at the docks, and nobody remembers him, and all of this stuff is going on, and we know the story, we know the movie, and that at that moment, and that was the first time I ever heard them mention God in the movie, I believe, and that was the at that moment when he said, "I want to live again. I want to live again. I want to live again." It is
Mhm.
so powerful. No matter how many times I watch that movie, it is that
Yeah.
one scene, because it's so powerful, and he presents it in such a way that it moves me to tears every time, because I could feel it. I am that person. I dive all into the movie. I'm I can't even see the movie, because I'm that person that you will say, "Sit down, be quiet."
Yeah.
It is that one scene, and when you said that, that scene popped in my mind, because you were so passionate about, you're saying you're praying, and you knew that you wanted to live again, and you knew, you had your son to take care of, and everything was, but you just kept moving forward.
Yeah.
It's a testament to your resilience and your relationship with God and your spirituality. It's truly a blessing, and I could see how sharing your story is so motivational, and for those that are going through, it's such an awesome and courageous story, because you didn't give up.
Right.
It's
You just hit the nail on the head. Having that will to live, and will to push, and will to get through the situation is something that, at the time I didn't know that I had that resilience in me, but God brought it through. And there's so many people who would want to give up and quit and not push any further, but it wasn't in me to let that happen. And that's through him. He prepared me and created me in a manner in which I was gonna do all that I could to get through that situation. And
Wow.
so now I take it as being equipped to get through any situation that's thrown before me and share that with others so they can get through any situation that they happen to face. So I think that's part of the purpose coming through, and I'm grateful, like I said, to even be here, to be blessed, to be here to speak with everybody and speak with yourself, Verna.
Wow, that's amazing, Tiran. So we thank you so much for being on our show and taking time out of your day to share your story. And I know you shared. I'm still trying not to cry.
I don't want.
So,
I don't want to make it a sad thing. I don't want to make
no,
it a
it's
sad
not a sad
thing.
thing. I'm just that person. I'm a crybaby. They're tears of joy. They're not sad tears at all. They're tears of joy because it's tears of victory, tears of celebrating your courageousness, your resilience, and not just being your courageousness, being having the courage to share your story, having the courage to take it as a way to motivate others and to share Christ with them.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's amazing because most people, you have some that will not dare to share their testimonies. They're not
Hmm.
ready. I guess you have to be ready to go there. You have
Yeah.
to be ready to share your story. And because we understand that our testimonies are not for us, they're for others,
Right.
because we just never know who they can help. And so that would be my tears of absolute faithfulness, and gratefulness, should I say, that you are willing to do that and take it as this is what God has for you or had for you, the plan. Although, you didn't look at it in a sad way. You bounced back. You that's really strong on your part. So I thank you for that, and I thank you for sharing it with us. So if you don't mind sharing with our audience how they can connect with you, how they can contact you, and any other thing that you would like to share with our audience, you can share it at this time.
No problem, Vernon. Thank you. My platform is called Reborn Resilient, and you can find me either through Instagram at Reborn Resilient. There's a Facebook page, Reborn Resilient, as well as you can find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well under Tiran Jackson. Or you can go to rebornresilient.com. On rebornresilient.com, you can see more information regarding to myself, the story, my platform, and just how I try to help other people through either one-on-one coaching, through an online program in which I'm introducing the principles that I went through on the recovery side to bounce back from that tragic situation, for other speaking, opportunities or so. You can find a lot of information there. And you can also, as I stated, find me on LinkedIn or reach out to me at Tiran Jackson at rebornresilient.com. So through any of those means, you can find me. I'm out there. Either Tiran Jackson or Reborn Resilient, you'll catch me.
Thank you, Tyran. And once again, we appreciate you for taking time out of your day to share your amazing story.
No problem, Verna. I'm an ordinary person too. But in the midst of all of this, I found a level of strength and resiliency through God to be able to create my purpose and find it despite the pain. So, like I said, Verna, I appreciate you having me on this afternoon, and it's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Tyran.
All right, thank you.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Well, we appreciate Tyran sharing his story with us. What an amazing story, and the courage that he had in sharing it with everyone. So we definitely appreciate him for that. And so today, and we are reading from By Still Waters, 365 Days of Devotion and Quiet and Refresh for Your Soul, to quiet and refresh your soul, by Anita Hickman and Maria Leslie. And so we're reading, and it reads, May we gasp at the wonders. Whatever conceal their sins does not prosper, but one who confess and renounce them finds mercy. And the scripture, it's Proverbs 28:13, and it's the NIV version. Imagine you're in a bouquet and you can't quite see the people seated on your side of the table because the person next to you is blocking your view. When your seatmate finally leans back in his chair and you can see your table companion clearly, you gasp and wonder. Little did you know, all the while you was eating and chatting away, you had been dining with someone you truly love. All our lives, we have been in the midst of the most exalting company of all, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But our view get hindered with sin. The good news is that when we confess our transgressions, the Lord offers us mercy. He will forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. May we gasp and wonder that the Lord is always in our midst. He is here, ready to listen, to guide, to forgive and restore, to sup with us in an intimate communion, and to love us like we've never been loved before. Now that's a dinner guest like none other. Lord Jesus, thank you for forgiving my sin. Please help me to resist the temptation of this world and to follow you more closely. Amen. And thank you again for tuning in to OPM Live, which is an extension of Ordinary People magazine. Please follow us on our Facebook page, OPM Live with Verna V. Nickelberry. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page, OPM Live with Verna V. Nickelberry. And once again, thank you, and we appreciate you. And as always, love, peace, and increase. And be blessed.